Hey everybody, I'm Caleb, the ideological leader of the Center for Political Innovation, and I'm here in the park in Brooklyn where I live, and I thought I would just record a morning message for you all. You know, I've been thinking about a lot of things lately. I just got done writing this book that was just published where I critique a communist leader in the United States, Bob Avakian, and I've been doing communist stuff my whole adult life. You know, since before I was a legal adult, I was investigating communist groups, and I've spent my entire, from the time I was, 18 up until now, I'm 35, I've been doing communist stuff. And a couple years ago, I got on a kick and I just started talking about optimistic, constructive socialism. And I keep coming back to that because I realized that the reason socialist and Marxist groups were not gaining popularity in the United States, especially at this time of economic crisis, when the economy is collapsing, you'd think those who call for jobs and health care for all would become more popular. But I realized the reason for that was that socialists and communists in the United States, for whatever reason, aren't optimistic. They're pessimistic, they're resentful, they're negative. And so when I started talking about patriotic socialism, when I started talking about the city-building tendency, it was because I wanted to present us in a way where we looked like we were trying to make the country a better place, where we were trying to make society better, where we were communicating that imperialism and the decaying capitalist system is tearing this country apart, but we want to rebuild it on new foundations. And people found that message to be so threatening. And when it really gets down to it, the reasons for that are very complicated, but they're not so complicated. They're quite simple. The reasons for that is that for a long time in the United States, at least since the beginning of the Cold War, the entire American identity has been predicated on anti-communism. And so because of that, those who became communists were those who seemed quite negative on the country. We were the ones who were angry at the country. We were the ones who felt alienated from society. The USA was quite prosperous during the post-World War II economic expansion. And the people who became communists were those who were mad at the country, were alienated from the country for a variety of reasons that probably had a lot to do with their own lives, their own experiences, etc. And communism became the ideology of those who felt alienated. And that's why when I first started going around communist groups, I found a lot of negative energy. I found a lot of people that were angry. I found a lot of people that were resentful. And now that the economy is collapsing, and now that imperialism is in a deep crisis, these communist groups aren't expanding, because when people are having a big crisis, they want someone who's going to fix the problem. And the communist groups are made up of people who largely don't give the vibe of, we love this country, we love this population, we love the people here, we want to make things better. They give the vibe of, I'm angry, I'm alienated from society, I've been hurt, I've been cast out, I've been treated unfairly. That's the vibe that they give. And that's not the vibe the Communist Party gave back in the day. Back in the days of Roosevelt, or even before that, they gave the vibe of, we're going to build a whole new country for working families. They talked about Soviet America, where everyone had jobs and education, where the country was rebuilt on new foundations and 5-year economic plans, was advancing technology. It was an optimistic vision. And, one of the themes that I talk about in my new book is the relationship between idealism and materialism. Because communists, as materialists, we argue that, that material defines thoughts, thoughts don't define material, that reality is not defined by the thoughts in people's heads, people's thoughts are a reflection of reality. But when it gets down to it, the way you think about things and the attitude that you choose to have can have a very big impact on the world around you. And that, I think about a funeral I went to when I was a kid. There was an old man who died, and people at that funeral reflected on what a positive person he was, and how every time he walked into a room, people felt happier as a result of him being there. He was just like a light that came into people's lives. That's really, really important. And these kinds of things are not things you can measure objectively. You can't do a mathematical formula to measure how positive somebody is. You can't do a mathematical formula to measure the vibe people get. But these kinds of idealist feelings, emotions, spiritual things, these are very important when you're building an organization. If you go to a political group, if you go to your first meeting of the group and everyone there gives you a negative vibe, you don't want to come back. But if you go to a political group and everyone seems friendly and they seem optimistic, they seem welcoming, they seem like they want you involved, they seem like they have answers, they seem like they have their feet on the ground, they're speaking coherently, why, you do want to get involved. And that, again, is not something you can objectively measure. It's a feeling that you get. And we've got to learn to pay attention to these kinds of things. You know, there's a reason that attitude is important. I remember when I was a kid, you know, my parents would tell me to have a good attitude, And I'd be an angry teenager and I'd say, who do they think they are? I can feel however I want to feel. Well, that old thing about having a good attitude, it's kind of like it's your duty to other people to be optimistic. It's your duty to other people to have a good attitude, because if you have positive energy, then your positive energy bounces off the other person and they have positive energy. And then you have positive energy from them. And when you're in a room full of people that are having a good attitude, it's much easier to be optimistic and hopeful about life. And that's really important. Communism in the United States gives off a pessimistic, negative, apocalyptic, destructive, hopeless, cynical vibe. And it's not going to have any future if it does that. The city building tendency, the Center for Political Innovation, gives off a hopeful vibe, an optimistic vibe. We love our country, we love America, we love the working class, we certainly love the people in our own organization and are happy to cooperate with them to achieve our political goals and put on our events. That's really, really important. And we pay attention to that, and we maintain an optimism. And that optimism gives us a glow and a power that I don't see other communist groups having. You know, all the old communist groups are all falling apart right now. You know, communism's wildly popular among young Americans. It's wildly popular on the internet. But all the old communist parties that maintain this pessimistic, cynical attitude, they're all dying. Meanwhile, the Center for Political Innovation is growing by leaps and bounds. New people are joining every day. And that shows that we have something. So I would encourage you to find ways to be optimistic, to spread optimism in the world, and think about how we can make the atmosphere at our events, the atmosphere in our publications and our social media content, and the atmosphere within our organization optimistic. How can we make sure that everything we do spreads light in a world of darkness and gives people hope? That's my message. So just think about that. Have a good day. I hope you have a lovely day today. Optimistic, constructive socialism. Long live the city building tendency.